Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Oscar Film Forecast. We are here for a little special video. We did this last year. We have seen all 10 of the Best Picture nominees, a feat that maybe not everyone is able to accomplish because some of these are quite hard to see. So we're quite lucky in those regards. So we thought it's an interesting collection of films, some that we both of us love, some that both of us don't completely enjoy. And I think we disagree on some of those. Unlike last year, I think we were kind of in step on what we like and didn't like. Less so this year. So this will be fun. We're going to be giving our personal rankings for each of the films, as well as talking about can they win Best Picture. We're going to go alphabetically, film by film, say our thoughts on the film, where it ranks in our personal top 10, and the chances for winning Best Picture. And then at the end, we are going to have to put our minds together and come up with a shared ranking of our two personal rankings, which will be difficult, I think, but it'll be fun as well.
It could be indicative of the future preferential ballots for PGA and the Oscars, listen, this is fun because I think, we're going to talk about movies that we don't tend to talk about in the Best Picture conversation because we're going to give you kind of their chance.
Yeah.
But no, it is. When we get to push this side and actually Jack and I get to actually talk about the movies we love.
Yeah.
I always find those conversations a lot of fun.
Oh, it's fun. It's very fun. And speaking of movies we love, I think let's start alphabetically with Anora. Anora, thoughts? Where does it rank for you within the 10?
Oh, so personally for me, it would be. I got to do some quick math. I think it would be fifth. Okay. Kind of middle of the pack, but it's very that top 5 is very strong for me. I love the film. I love Sean Baker's works, and I think this might be his strongest yet. I think that it is he walks the tone so perfectly here, and the performances are just constantly revealing themselves in dynamic ways. I think as far as its chances to win Best Picture, I do think it could do very well in a preferential balloting. I think a lot of people really like it. It does have a lot of the key categories. It has picture, it has director, it has screenplay in the original category.
Everything it could, really.
It has film editing. And then it got Mikey Madison. And I still contend that getting Yor Borisov just does show real strength. I know that we kind of assumed that he would have gotten in there, but that is remarkable that this actor, nobody really knew who he was, character actor, was able to, kick out Denzel Washington, I think that just shows there's a lot of strength for the film. And given that Anora could come off maybe Critics' Choice very well, we'll see if it can pull off a win there for Best Picture. I do think maybe there's a chance it can build some late stage momentum, but I get the sense that it doesn't have the why now sort of contingent. It needs the sort of why is Anora worth honoring with Best Picture this year? What's so important about Anora? And I think they're struggling to answer that question. It's just a really well-loved movie. And so that's kind of why I feel like it's not in the top tier of what I think will win. But it's a great film. I would be completely fine if it ended up taking the gold at the end of the night.
Yeah. Me too. As we can see, I think it will do decent on a preferential ballot. It is my number 4, so it's in the middle of both of our lists. I don't think it will be. I don't think there's anyone who hates this film, but it's probably some people's number 1. But I just don't. I agree with you. I don't know if it will have the same level of passion as some of these other films. But I really liked it. I think it was both I had a great time when I first saw it. When you come off the high of the first time watching it, even though it does end on a sad note, I think you're still on a cinematic high at the end of it. The second time I liked it a little less. I do think when they're looking for Mark Eidelstein's character, it does slow down a little bit, but that's really my main complaint. It's bold and loud. It's also tender and quiet and emotional. Like you said, all the performances are great. Mikey Madison is incredible. Mark Eidelstein, I would have wished he got a single nomination anywhere at the major precursors this year. He was my favorite supporting performance. I also loved Yuri Borisov in it. He's great. A very understated and subtle performance from an actor that people didn't really know. So I think it's, like you said, incredible that he did manage to get in there. And yeah, Kieran Gillian was hilarious. The scene where he's talking to the young kids about them being out of touch and their generation and all that was very funny. So yeah, I had a great time, but I do think I agree with you. It's a fun time. It's a great film, but I don't know how many people are going to be this is Best Picture. I think people will enjoy it, but I think there needs to be a little more I think there has to sometimes be a weight to a film for it to win Best Picture. And I don't feel a weight of importance surrounding this, but I really liked it.
Just to reiterate for our audience, so it's number 4 on your list. That would be your own ballot, or do you think that's the 4th?
That's my personal.
Okay.
That's my personal number 4 on my list.
Yeah, we should be clear that when we're talking about the ranking today, we're talking about our
Yes.
personal ballots. Because I don't know if you would have Anora maybe a scooch higher on your.
I'd
Or
probably
maybe,
have it at 3 in terms of chances of winning Best Picture, but
I think
on my
it's
personal
funny
list,
'cause
it's 4.
we started with one where my personal preference is where I think it is. I think it is the number 5 most likely.
Yeah.
I think there are 4 movies that have a better shot. So yeah. So all right. So if we're sticking with alphabetical, we're moving on to the Brutalist. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, we just did a whole review of this. So if you want like a deep dive spoiler breakdown, if you've seen it, of the film, we start off with little non-spoiler thoughts. You can get it there. I'm definitely not as high on it as others have been. I really admire a lot of it. Like technically it's very well done. I really need to emotionally connect to a film for it to work for me. And I found myself like more at like a distance kind of like the architecture, admiring it, like, oh, that's nice architecture. That's very well done. But I didn't like really feel it. There were moments where I did, but I think that was mostly because of Brody's performance, which I do think is, in my opinion, the biggest achievement of the film. He carries like the 3 hour, and I forget how long it is, like 35-minute film on his back. He goes through like the entire gamut of emotions, every single emotion. But yeah, I just felt like the film in the first half was really soaring. I had a great time, and I think it was more subtle with what it was trying to say. And I think once we get to the second half, the film does kind of change in tone, and I think it becomes a little more heavy-handed with its metaphors and the things it's trying to say. I don't want to spoil stuff, but there are specific scenes where I think it gets like way too obvious in what Corbet is trying to say. That I preferred more of the subtle nature of this the first half, but I still enjoyed it overall. It didn't completely come together for me. It felt a little disjointed by the end of it, but I still had a good time. I think it's a good film. My personal ranking, I think I would probably have it at, oh god, people aren't gonna like this. I would probably have it at number 6 in my personal ranking.
Okay.
So it's in there, but it's not my favorite.
I have it at number 4 for me.
Okay.
So I've had 2 viewings of it, and I think that second viewing brought a lot of it together, because I think that for me on the second viewing, you really see the arc of this story, and there's a lot of tragedy involved, and I think that what I commend Brady Corbet in is that it is not relentless. I found it to be a film that has such beautiful moments of awe in it about the human condition and about artistry and expression, and trying to contain certain traumas and trying to kind of express certain things internally in the external world. I thought that was very moving, with some fantastic performances. I think Felicity Jones is just a pure example of what a great supporting performance should be. And the cinematography is stunning. The production design is so stark and imposing on the film. And I think as we talked about in our review, I do like kind of this sort of subversion of it's all about the journey, not the destination. And he's like, no, it's about the destination. We desire to reach someplace. It's not about the work of getting there. Like, that's the point. And so I found all of that, again, on second viewing, to come like really into focus. So yeah, I think it would be number 4 for me. I think as far as chances to win Best Picture, very strong. If that sort of art house crowd like really responds to the film. I struggle that, how many people like me are going to give it a second watch, which I think usually is necessary.
I think it needs a second watch. Everyone I've talked to said that they liked it more a second time. And I've also heard
the case with most movies, but I think this movie in particular benefits. And I always think it's hard to win Best Picture if you're not rewatchable and you're not watching the movie, maybe when it comes out, and then maybe right before you vote. What's the last screener you're going to watch before you vote? I think that's always key. And I don't know if people are going to do that with The Brutalist, which is what I worry about. But it does have craft categories like cinematography, it's surprise and editing, and then it has like the main directing, acting, writing, picture. So it does have a lot of support. So hopefully people see it in the theater and give it the time it deserves. The intermission, I think, honestly, is helping a lot. It's giving this different vibe than having to sit there for 3.5 hours. It's just so much fun when the intermission happens. It reminds me of why I love going to the theater, like Broadway musical theater. So yeah, I think it could do very well. I think it's 1 or 2. I think as far as the likelihood of winning.
I do think it can very well win, especially given the competition. And it does just remind me so much, though, of like films like Power of the Dog, Roma, where it's like very respected filmmaking wise. It wins some tech categories, it wins director, but it's not enough people's like favorite, and it's a little too divisive, maybe a little too artsy, a little too slow for it to end up winning.
it has an austere quality to itself, which doesn't always invite the most like warm
What was
reception.
the last like austere film to win? I don't think Oppenheimer's really austere.
No.
Than the way The Brutalist is.
I mean, we don't have to relitigate. My thing with Oppenheimer is it's this beautiful testament to like the human experience, and like, you know, it's so warm. That's why the Emily Blunt scene at the end is so moving. So I wouldn't call that austere.
Moonlight, probably, right?
I mean, Nomadland, you could argue.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
I think Nomadland is closer to the, like, they would make a fitting double feature. But also, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's all these movies have, you know, warmth and empathy. If you don't, then you shouldn't be on this list.
Yes.
But I think The Brutalist is, it has that quality, but also it's a tragedy, you know, and I think that I give them credit, you know, in the way that I gave credit to, and this is what Oppenheimer does have, and Succession, you know, these are modern tragedies. And I think that it's really exciting that people are not shying away from telling stories that don't end on a happy note.
Yeah, I agree. What is next?
A Complete Unknown.
Oh, okay.
MNOP.
Yeah.
And so, I'll get us started on this one. I'm actually really interested to watch this film again, because I think on first viewing, I was kind of, you know, taken aback by how much music is in it. It definitely uses the music as a crutch.
It does.
And thankfully, Timothée Chalamet and Monica Barbaro are wonderful singers, and they perform them with great ease, as does Edward Norton. And I think what I loved about it was the texture of the film. Not only in the cinematography, like you can really sense like the sort of film grain quality, but I think it gets the era so well. It gets this sort of, you know, not only this changing of the guard in the artistic world and in the folk music scene, but just how people were changing, how the mood of the world was getting a little bit grittier and a lot less simple. And I think they captured that moment in Americana so astutely. I do think it does. It's a little redundant in some places. Yeah. And I think it puts hats on hats in certain scenes. Like, okay, we get like Elle Fanning's upset at Timothée Chalamet. Like how many times do we have to say the same thing? So I think there's a version of this movie that's maybe 20 to 30 minutes shorter. That's a little bit sharper. And I do think that, listen, James Mangold, which we didn't really discuss this week in our coverage, like it isn't the most flashy directing. He has a certain stableness to his craft that is, I think it is alluring, especially we're going to talk about some movies that kind of feel like 5 different movies cascading into one. And so I give him credit that like he does, again, he gets the setting right. I think emotionally he gets all the actors pitched in a certain way, literally and figuratively, that is compelling. But it's not like, it doesn't really have a voice. So I do think it struggles in that regard. I also think it just struggles in that you're trying to explain something that is a mystique, you know, trying to explain the myth of Bob Dylan and what he represents is hard, because I think he would be the first one to say, like, I just do what feels right. And so giving this much weight into the choices and the decisions that this very fluid, natural person make doesn't give the same rush that I think other movies about, like, let's say Oppenheimer does, where there was an internal logic to everything that he was doing. So I think those are some of the failings with not failings, because I don't, you know, even we'll talk about
shortcomings.
Yes, exactly. It's like, when we talk about artistic failures,
there's some other movies we can,
but yes, I think that's the shortcomings for the film. So it would probably, for me, it would be, I think I'm going to put it at 8. Because
me too.
Okay. Because
I also have it at 8.
When we get to a certain movie I'm going to talk about, there's an asterisk with it. So
okay.
Yes, and we'll get to that later. So yes, clearly no 8.
Yeah, I agree. I think it starts off strong with the way it like you said, it makes this really like lived in sense of like the music scene at the time and Bob Dylan as he enters this world, and like the scenes where he sings with Pete Seeger and eventually Joan Baez. I found all of those to be
when
the
he
most
got
compelling.
Scenes, so good.
Oh, great scene. Yeah. There's some great moments, but I agree it's repetitive. It's way too long in my opinion. And I do think when it moves into the more like after that, like first, I don't know, like 20, 30 minutes, when it moves into the more like biopic formula of like, and then this happened, and then this happened, I feel like it loses some focus and it feels less dynamic. Particularly in I'm not a huge fan of like, I really was not as much of a fan of the film as it went on, as it continued. I became less and less of a fan, but and I agree with you. He
save a lot of the second hour. I feel.
Yeah, they do. But I think I agree. Dylan is himself, Bob Dylan, an enigma. And I do think I don't know how much that kind of persona helps, how much it contributes to a film that's more of a straightforward biopic. I feel like it can get a little frustrating with how distant he is and how vague a lot of him and his relationships are. I feel like the kind of persona that Dylan is much better for a film like I'm Not There than it is for a film like this, which is more traditional. So I think that distance from the character, like I said, I need to like connect to characters and films for them to completely work for me, as I talked about with The Brutalist. And he's at so much of a distance throughout that it's similar to The Brutalist. I can admire like the performances, how James Mangold like really establishes this environment, but I felt it was unlike The Brutalist, I felt it was a little long. I felt it was a little repetitive, and I didn't completely connect to it. But good performances. I had a good time. Number 8. It doesn't have a shot at winning Best Picture.
Yeah. I think
these movies don't win.
I think it's funny that you talk like the fact that Bob Dylan could be made about him from James Mangold and Todd Haynes just shows the the range of how he's perceived in the cultural canon. I think it has a chance. I think as far as like Best Picture potential, I mean, it's probably like 6 or 7.
Yeah, if that. Yeah, these kind of films just don't really win Best Picture. They win like other categories, acting, other stuff, some text, but Best Picture they don't get that level.
Not even when they're fiction. Even A Star Is Born has been nominated out of the 4 iterations. It's been nominated for Best Picture 3 times. Never wins.
Never won. Nope, it's just not gonna happen. Conclave is next up, I believe. Yes, I'm getting my alphabets right. Okay, yes. Conclave's an interesting one for me. I remember seeing it at TIFF, and so many people walking out of it were just like in love with it. I just thought it was fine personally. I think it's like a fun watch, but I thought that there should have been more. There's a lot of talk about like the church itself and like its political views and how some of these decisions for the next pope are going to be way too like conservative and right, and some of them will be more liberal and accepting of certain things. But I feel like with all of these different stances of the potential of these cardinals, the potential popes, I feel like there wasn't enough like actual discussion. I feel like there was just like statements like, oh well, this guy's going to do that, and this guy believes in that, and then this guy is this and that option. I feel like there should have been more like butting of heads and actual discussion of that sort of stuff that wasn't there. And also just like, it's obvious once a certain character is introduced who is going to end up being chosen as the Pope. So I found it quite, for a thriller to be predictable, that's supposed to be suspenseful and stuff, I found it to be quite predictable, which obviously hurts the level of thrills and suspense. And the choice that is made in the final act, I have no issue with the choice. It just feels very thrown on and out there. I feel like it just, I don't know, it just feels like it's going to an end, and then it's just like, oh, we're also going to do this. And that could have been an interesting thing, especially like giving the patriarchal establishment that is the church to explore, but just kind of like, oh, also this, and then it ends. So I feel like I would have liked to see that explored. It's not like a bad idea. It's just like a thrown in there idea that they don't really explore. But I still had a fun time watching it. The performances are good. Ralph Fiennes really carries this on his back. I loved Isabella Rossellini. I think her Oscar nomination is deserved. I loved her little curtsy. Great moment. And like John Lithgow, Sergio Casello hitting the vape as a cardinal. Lots of fun stuff throughout. I just didn't love it. I just was like a shrug by the end. So how about you? Oh, I didn't say. I probably would rank it number 7 on my personal ballot.
We are in lockstep once again.
We're in lockstep so far. Yeah.
But I actually, I think I liked the movie more than you did, even though I haven't.
Probably.
Because I found the movie kind of runs in between 2 modes. The one mode is it's a straightforward, entertaining, papal thriller. And it's very like, okay, this is this segment where we talk about this character, and then we're going to move into this character. And so it kind of feels like, structurally it like
almost felt like a TV show. Like this is the one episode about this pope, and then he's eliminated.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward, very simplistic story. But the other mode is that I think that it is at moments very profound as far as the world that we live in and where faith comes into play. And there's a couple of monologues that I think Ralph Fiennes gives that are so moving. As there's one about like how if there was no doubt, then there would be no reason for faith. And so just opening yourself up to doubt. And so I think the movie has a lot of like strong themes about how people within an institution grow within it. And specifically how religion plays into our current world. I found all of that really interesting. And I think Ralph Fiennes is so brilliant in this film because you can see all of the layers much like Fernando Torres and I'm Still Here, like so much that he wants to say that he's not choosing to say because he has this level of respect or tact for what he's doing, or honestly, he knows that what he wants doesn't really matter in this situation. And so I just found him to be a fascinating character. And I did enjoy seeing the inner workings of how everybody tried to combat each other. I mean, this is I remember seeing this like 2 weeks before the election. And so, talking about morality and electoral politics is, it's a very, germane topic right now. And I think it does it rather well. So I agree with you. I think that in the end, like, it's not this thing where like it changes my worldview or, I don't think it's like doing anything like groundbreaking, but I do think it achieves what it sets out to do rather well. I do, every time I've seen it 3 times now, and every time I watch, I'm like, you know what, this is a damn good movie. The phrase like they don't make them like this anymore, I think it's overused. But this is the sort of movie that kind of like it's not trying to rewrite the instruction manual. It knows what movie it is. It tells it effectively. And I do think it takes a story that could have been just very like, people have talked about it like, an airport read as far as like what the book is. I think it gives it a little bit more gravitas. And I attribute that to Ralph Fiennes. I think also the cinematography in some places, I think frames how they're trapped this location so well. And as you said, Rossellini, Stanley Tucci, I think is just I was just watching Spotlight today, and he's just such a great supporting actor to throw into any of these like real adult dramas. And so, again, enjoyed the film, but there's couples that I liked a bit more. So I agree with you at number 7.
Winning Best Picture. What do we think? I think it kind of took a hit when it missed director and cinematography and some of the stuff that it was expected to get.
Costumes,
but I do.
Right? It didn't get into.
It did get costumes.
Oh,
it surprisingly did get it. I still don't get that. They're all wearing the same thing, but I guess they're well made. But I think it's still got a shot. I think it's got less of a shot than we thought pre-Oscar nominations. There's still a world where it could be, as we were talking, you just mentioned Spotlight, where it's another Stanley Tucci Spotlight win, where it just wins picture and screenplay, because it looks pretty locked up for screenplay.
That would be that. I mean, what else could
that would be it?
I mean, Ralph Fiennes would have to really start mounting a campaign.
He'd have to actually campaign, which he's not. Yeah. So,
I think that you would think this could do well in a preferential ballot, but I also think there are some people who are polarized by the ending, and they always say, leave them on a high. And this is kind of, I feel like the most controversial. I mean, there are the people who are going to object that I think are objecting out of bigotry, but then there are the people who just feel like it's a step too far, and they feel like you're trying to get one over the audience. You're trying to do that last twist that really like, ha, and it's just people are like, that's not the movie I was
thrown in.
Yeah, so I could see that kind of doing what it did for us. But like, we like the movie. I liked it a little bit more, but it's not.
It ends on a weird note. It builds well, and it's just like, oh, okay.
Exactly. So even though I do the monologue that comes out of that voice, I think is a very beautiful.
The dialogue's great in this.
Maybe that's a directing thing, and maybe that's why Edward Berger didn't take it as a director. So I do think though that maybe the path for this would be it'd have to overperform at SAG, win ensemble, and then maybe it could do well at PGA, not PGA. Well, maybe PGA, but at BAFTA. I think those would be the places you would have to see Conclave do well. But I just struggle. I just don't think it's anybody's like priority that this is
or anyone's favorite either.
Yeah, which is it. That's why I've been likening it to Belfast, which is a movie that if nobody was kind of mentioning off the cuff, but if you said, "Oh, did you like Belfast?" Like, "Oh yeah, I liked it," and then it won screenplay, and which I think is going to be the path for Conclave. I don't see it rising above that. I think there are other movies that, love them or hate them, are inciting more conversation, more passion. And just Conclave kind of feels like an afterthought at this point. So
it does. Yeah, I agree. So we agree with the last two in terms of their number ranking at 8 and 7. Next up is Dune Part 2. Where does this rank for you on your personal list?
Yes. So this is number 3 for me. I am a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve, and I have really enjoyed his interpretation of Frank Herbert's novel. I found this to be just if to quote Guillermo del Toro, this is cinema. This is the sort of like to see a movie that is just cinema. And so, I remember seeing this for the first time. And when that grandfather worm approaches the camera with the sound and fury of the IMAX, surround sound and the visuals, I honestly felt my stomach jump as if I was in actual danger. And I think that just speaks to how well crafted this story is, how just we're dealing with a level of professional filmmaking that we rarely see. It was a beautiful story about how this tragic figure falls into becoming every nightmare version of him that he worried he could be in the midst of power. It is a rather perceptive encapsulation of how religions and religious groups fall prey to those that want to abuse their faith. I actually think it's probably a better religious thriller than Conclave is.
It is
a more interesting one. Javier Bardem in particular did not get talked about enough for he's deep. He is darkly, it is darkly upsetting in a performance that also just makes you laugh consistently. The action sequences were improved here from the first film. And there's just, I just can't speak enough about this. And this is just my sort of wheelhouse because it's high level genre stories with just such impeccable craft. And it's a story about how, those people that we put everything on, they're not really all that powerful. That's a story that I just connect to because I think that is true. One of the smartest things that I ever heard somebody say, there was a podcast with Jon Stewart and Pod Save America, and they were talking about how the president of the United States is a lot less powerful than people actually think. And they were talking about, and I just think that's true. I think we put power and we assume these lofty ideas to people that really don't have it. It's why I don't believe in auteur theory, because that's like, Christopher Nolan is a wonderful filmmaker, but I'm not going to credit every single thing to his vision. I think that he is surrounded by a lot of very talented people. And so the idea that this story is talking about what happens when people decide to put everything into one person and the dangers in that, just right up my alley. So I love this movie. It is not winning Best Picture. It's right now fighting to be relevant enough to win any of the categories it's nominated for, but it's a fantastic film. And it's definitely one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it as well. Probably not quite as much as you. It ranks at number 5 for me on my personal ballot.
I have a guest list. I want everybody
of my ballot
list. I have now guessed the list for Jack, and I guessed that Dune would be number 5 for you. So I'm very
okay. Perfect.
I'm going to see if the rest of my list comes true for you.
I think you might do a good job. I might be predictable. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. Like you said, it levels up from the first film in every way. I think the performances also, like Timothée Chalamet, I think really steps into Paul Atreides here. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica just remains my favorite part of this entire thing. She's just so good. Talk about a supporting actress performance that should have been honored for one of them. I just love her performance. Zendaya gets to really level up in this. I feel like she's like a co-protagonist with Paul. She's really our eyes into the story. It ends on her of a amazing final note of the film. All the technical aspects, like you said, I think that sandworm riding scene is one of the best scenes of the year in terms of craft, exhilaration, all that stuff, like character development. So yeah, I had a great time watching it. I don't really have anything against it. It's just like you say, this is the type of film that really works for you. Sometimes these blockbusters don't connect with me in a way that some of these other films we're going to talk about higher on my list do. But it still connected with me on an emotional level more than most blockbusters do. So yeah, I had a great time watching it. It's my number 5. It won't win Best Picture, but maybe for the third one, maybe we'll get our Return of the King moment. I have doubts. But
thank you for bringing up Rebecca Ferguson, because I could have given you the argument for the first film that she should have won Best Supporting Actress, but we'll leave that for now. You want to go first?
What's next? I forgot the alphabetical order. What's next?
That'll be Emilia Pérez.
Oh no, you can go first on that.
All right. So I saw this film in October at the New York Film Festival.
Yes.
It was basically a sold out crowd, and when I came out of it, I was really I was bowled over by the ambition of the film. And it was doing a lot of things that I had never seen before, which, given how many movies we watch, that's exciting when I feel like this is a new way of telling a story. I thought that the 3 main performances were really captivating. They were all such different characters, but I thought all of them, the way they interacted with each other was really investing, and I just was leaning into how these scenes would play out with these personalities. I thought it had a very unique use of color in certain scenes and how it interpreted the musical language in this way. So there were a lot of things that I really just gravitated towards. And I acknowledged even then that there were stitches in between the scenes a lot of times. And it was a little bit of like it was a little bit cumbersome in getting the audience to go from this idea of this movie to this idea. And I think that speaks to the characters not really being like who the protagonist is, who the story is, not that being not well defined enough. But when I saw it, I was like, in the end, I feel like those stitches fade away because the movie is compelling enough, and I think it's working on a melodramatic level that it makes it worth it. Since then, more people have seen this movie, and we've had some conversations. And I don't want to ignore the reason why I said this. I don't want to ignore that was my first interaction with the movie, and so far I've only seen the movie once. That is my only interaction with the film. But I do think there's a lot of merit to what we have been talking about as far as the trans representation, the Mexican representation. And I do think those are major strikes against, because I do think part of the issue with the movie is the protagonist and not having a clear definition of who the story is about. And that comes down to the fact that the story about a trans woman, she's not the main character of her story, as much as the movie maybe wants to try and tell you that she is. And the fact that they pushed Carla Sofia Gaston for Best Actress is trying to trick you. But no, she's not. Zoe Saldana is the main character of the story. She is who we spend a large portion of the movie with. I know halfway through, Carla's, comes into the story. But at that point, I feel like you're working off the framework of a different main character.
Saldana's the eyes into the film, and that's usually the perspective, the lead.
And I mean, how is that any different than Green Book, where we have this story about this very accomplished Black character, but we're going to tell it through the eyes of the white guy, Yeah. So I do think that also I am more lenient with a film like this as far as the trans stuff, because it is new. We have not seen a major film, I feel, talk about these issues that is getting this amount of acclaim. So of course they're going to fall on their face and do things that they probably shouldn't do. But that's what happens when you do stuff for the first time, and hopefully people learn from this and take it into the future, and we get
watch I Saw the TV Glow.
Exactly. I mean, that's why. Listen, another reason to love Emma Stone. She has an eye out for the talent like this, and that's why I love her. And she produced that film. Also, The People's Joker was another great example of this. And so, but those movies do well when movies like Emilia Pérez are at least getting attention. And so, like, yes, it's a very imperfect messenger, but at least it's having these conversations. But yes, I do think it has major flaws in how it tells the story. And I think there are certain things that they could do to finesse it, and they would have done a lot of the work for it. I also think that they kind of open themselves up for certain critiques. Like, I think the tone runs in and out of the movie because there's so many different genres at play. So like the clip that everybody's seen of the hello, nice to meet you.
Vagina.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. It feels very campy, and like, to me, like in the moment it works, but when you look at the movie in total, especially the way it ends, it's like it kind of shows you how like unique Baz Luhrmann's films are, and how like the fact that Moulin Rouge works at all is a miracle, because it could so quickly go off the rails. I think the movie does escape Jacques Audiard at points because tonally he can't decide what he wants. So I do think it is very flawed, but I also can't deny that there are moments where the movie does really click. And I feel it's hard for me to say, because I know people will object. I do think its heart is in the right place. And I think it's trying to do something revolutionary and exciting. And it does that enough of the time that I can't write it off completely. But yeah, this is a freaking minefield, man.
Where is it? Is it last place for you?
So this is the thing. I don't know if we're going off the first time I watched the movie, which I think is fair, because a lot of these movies I've only seen once, and I've seen them recently. So this is, and it hasn't had the sort of discourse yet that it might have. Maybe in 2 months, A Complete Unknown is going to be the most toxic thing that we've
I doubt it.
But I do think sitting here now, it is the movie that I think is maybe least deserving of getting a Best Picture nomination. So even because like I didn't particularly love Nickel Boys on round one, like hopefully I'll go. I know you're.
I'll get to it. But yeah.
At least Nickel Boys is consistent. I don't appreciate it's the consistency that it does it, but it's a consistent film, where Emilia Pérez is not. So I'm going to use the Moonlight argument, which is that La La Land is my favorite movie of all time. But if you ask me what should win Best Picture, I think it should have been Moonlight, where Emilia Pérez is not maybe my least favorite movie of these 10, but I do think it's the one that's least deserving to be a Best Picture nominee. So I'll probably put it 10th.
Okay.
Does that make sense
Interesting.
at all?
Yes, I'm curious what your number 9 is, because then that's probably the one that you actually liked the least. So we'll see. Emilia Perez is obviously my number 10. It's I'm not even going to get into the controversy. I feel like I agree with it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I went first on this one.
Yeah. Thank you for addressing it. I agree with everyone who has complaints about it. I'm not personally in either of those communities, so I feel like I can't truly speak to it as well as they can. So read those criticisms. I've read them. They all make sense to me. I think you can see Jack Audiard in his interviews maybe didn't do all of his research, and I think maybe going forward that's something he should consider. But the film itself, with that regardless, it's a film that tries to do so many things, which is something you can respect, but I think you can't really respect it when it tries to do so many things and it fails at every single one of them. It tries to be a musical. None of the songs are very memorable or good to me, in my opinion. I think a lot of them are actually quite hard to listen to. It's trying to do some social commentary with like the trans and Mexican representation, and it obviously does not do any of that well. I just feel like everything it tries to be like a crime drama at points, like with the like shootouts and like all the like gang and cartel aspects to it that I don't think worked. I just think none of this film really works, and none of it I really found interesting, and a lot of it is like tonally weird to me. Like I remember watching the film and I was just very confused, but scene by scene, like what is this film? I feel like Jack Audiard like didn't really find out what he wanted the film to be. Like one day they were shooting one scene and it was like the day they were shooting like the penis to vagina song, I think was a very different tone versus like when they're shooting like the third act, like a shootout, like a finale of the film. I feel like those are two completely different films. And I just feel like scene by scene, I'm like, okay, maybe this is what the movie is. And then it's just scenes and I'm like, well, what is happening? What is the vision here? It's like, his direction is distinct, but it's just not specific in a way. Like he does some interesting camera works that I like moving of the camera that I think is interesting, but I don't really understand the motivation behind it. That's really my issue with so much of the film. I don't understand the motivation. I don't understand the rhythm, the performances. I think Zoe Saldana is the positive thing about this film. Really, I think she more than anyone, I think, understands what the film is trying to be, even probably more than Jack Audiard himself, I would argue. You can tell that through her performance. I think she probably understands it the best. Carla's good. I don't think it was anything groundbreaking. We don't need to get into the Selena Gomez performances. I don't want to upset any stands. I actually do really like Adriana Paz in this film. I found her performance, even though it's a small role, to probably be the most grounding and relatable performance along with Saldana's. So the performances were also like the whole film just on different levels. So I just didn't completely enjoy it. And then you throw on top of that all of the potential controversies. That just makes it even more problematic. So it is obviously number 10 for me. Best Picture is probably number 1, honestly, which is insane. I don't know if I've seen this level of disconnect before between the Academy and most people.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute since we've seen it. Yeah, I think that it's very, listen, it's the nomination leader with 13 nominations. There's a lot of love for this film, and I think it could do well at SAG. It could win SAG Ensemble. It's an international film, so you can imagine that maybe there are international groups that will get behind it, and it'll have that voting contingent. And then it has the music branch, it has the actors, it has the director.
Every branch, 13 nominations. Every branch liked the film.
Yeah, so just a question of if people start to think it's overhyped, if the controversies really do start to take it down, because
the ballot can hurt it. The fact that it's a ranked ballot, I think some people will put this last.
Yes, and we thought that they were tough putting La La Land last because they didn't want it. But there were people who liked it but didn't want to see it win Best Picture. You're going to see people who don't like this movie, I think, put it last. The question is how many of those people are in the Academy.
My main thing with this is if you want to make a political like vote this year, like a screw Trump vote, pretty much. I keep saying it ever since it seemed like it could win Best Picture. It's a movie that centers around women, transgender people, and Mexican people, and those are 3 communities that are most probably going to be affected by the Trump presidency.
And most offensive to some people, it's a musical. Okay.
And it's yeah, but it's a very of the moment with those demographics that I think, and it just seems like there's a disconnect, I guess, between the Academy and general audiences. I haven't personally met someone in real life or even online who I know who is like, I love this film. This film just like really works for me. I'm gonna put it like it's my favorite of the year. It's my favorite of the movies.
I've met some of these people. It's like we're talking about them.
These people.
Yeah. But I think it speaks to, and I think this is something that's something of note and something that's good about our society, which is that I think a lot of the people that I know of who don't like the movie are younger, The people who like it are older. And I think it speaks to the fact that we are just more versed.
I don't talk to a lot of old people. Yeah.
Jack doesn't know anybody older than the age of 25.
I don't. Not even my parents.
I think it speaks to the younger generation. I think is more tuned into these conversations. And I think the older generation, they probably aren't as familiar with these subjects. So this is a movie that is introducing these topics in a way that I don't think it's introducing it for us. I saw the TV Glow. I saw The People's Joker, but most people didn't. And they're seeing Emilia Pérez because it's on Netflix. So I think that's part of it, is that they don't know that this is like, it's like what I talked about with Barbie versus Poor Things. Like Barbie is Feminism 101. Poor Things is the graduate level course. But there's nothing wrong if you find Barbie profound and moving, because if you haven't experienced more movies like Poor Things, then Barbie will be that, and that's okay. It's opening the door. Hopefully, that's the good thing about something like Emilia Pérez, is that if you liked Emilia Pérez, then go find I Saw the TV Glow. Like, I wish that was the next thing to watch instead of whatever, The Witcher or whatever thing Netflix is putting.
Yeah, who knows?
It turned into a very philosophical conversation.
Don't Look Up is probably next up on Netflix. But I don't know. I think it definitely has a good shot. I think, interestingly enough, I think it's probably Netflix's best shot they've had at winning Best Picture, and they've come. I don't know how much.
Roma close.
I think, but in past years they had the Netflix thing going against them, like, oh, we're not going to vote for a Netflix film for Best Picture. I don't know how much that is. I think so much of the industry has worked with Netflix at this point. I don't know how much that is still in there, especially when I think they're seeing more threats being like TikTok and stuff like that at this point. So I don't know how much.
That is still a contingent, but we're not even hearing about it because there's so much other things to talk about.
Yes, this movie. Not even getting into the AI stuff with this and Brutalist, but that's Emilia Pérez, number 10 on both of our lists. I don't know the alphabet at this. Is it I'm Still Here?
It is I'm Still Here. Would you like to give this a go?
I can. We just, by the time this video comes out, we'll have a full review talking about I'm Still Here. One of the biggest surprises for me for this year has been built up, especially online. There's lots of Brazilian love for this film as such a great film that I was like worried that I was like maybe not going to love it, but I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very moving portrait of this family over time that is affected by this military dictatorship taking a loved one from them, and how especially through like the camera aspects of the film and the daughter shooting, the happy moments of the family together, about remembering and honoring the loved ones that you lose and the moments that you had with them while they were there, and also remembering and honoring moments in history so they're not repeated. And the whole ensemble is great. Fernanda Torres obviously carries the whole thing. It's one of my favorite performances of the year. It's just a powerhouse, and it could have been like melodramatic. It could have been over the top given the circumstances, but it is just she's keeping up this strong front throughout the entire film of like holding this family together. But you can just see in her eyes throughout a lot of the film, and there are moments where like her whole composure cracks that I just found so compelling. It's just a powerhouse of a performance, in my opinion. The kids are all great. I forget the actor who plays her husband, but he's in it for the first third. It's great. That first third does such a great job at just establishing this family and us endearing us really to them. And the way it's shot with the cinematography in the first third is just very warm, very happy. And then it takes a turn. The cinematography changes. I just think it's a very moving film. The final like 20 minutes, I was like crying. Just because of how emotional I found the whole journey to be and where it ended up ending. So I really, really love this film. I don't think I love it so much that it's my number 2 on my personal list. I really like it, especially compared to some of these other films. I think it is it's just like I always talk about, I need to emotionally connect to a film for me to like really love it. And between this and the number 1, these are the ones that I was definitely most emotionally affected by. I really love I'm Still Here. I don't think it has a shot at winning Best Picture, but
it's a little too small and doesn't have enough support from all the branches. But I agree, it's a beautiful film. It would be, I love it. I really do. It's number 6 for me.
Oh wow, that's our biggest difference so far.
I think so. Well, we're going
to run into some big ones.
We're about to. I think listen, I agree with everything you said. I think it's how Salas really cements you in this home, and how he directs the family in relation to this location that has such emotional depth and meaning in their lives, and how they learn to say goodbye to that, and how they struggle and persevere to have ownership over their farewell. I think is a very moving thread throughout this entire film. Beautifully acted, beautifully directed, beautifully written. It's just a really well done drama. And I think the greatest thing that a movie like this could do is I think it honors the integrity and the spirit of the real life people. And that, of course, leads with Fernando Torres' performance. So it's a phenomenal film. You talk about the inverse, where Emilia Pérez is a movie that I didn't hate, but I also don't think should be in a Best Picture conversation. This is a movie I'm glad is in a Best Picture conversation. If you look at Best Picture like a history blog of like all the great films of the year, I think this is definitely worthy to be on that list. So it is a very strong number 6. Very strong number 6.
I swear, if this next film is your number 9, this video is going to end immediately. Nickel Boys.
Because I've done my math, and we have your 1 is my 9, and my 1 is your 9. So
it's your number 9. Okay, wow.
It balances out. So
I guess that's insane to me. But let's end it on. I'll end it on a positive note. Let's start with your thoughts on Nickel Boys.
Listen, I don't have it out for this movie. It's just that I found the movie to be restraining in a way that dramatically I didn't connect with. Now, maybe that is because it's doing such a risk, shooting in this point of view style. And if I go back to it on a second viewing, prepared for it, maybe I'll like it. I mean, if I had done this after only watching The Brutalist once, then it would have been much lower. And so I'm fully prepared that maybe on second viewing, Nickel Boys will work for me. I just found the experience to be a little like not sickening in like a figurative way. Like it just camera movement. I was like, oh my God, like just it's so at odds with how you're reading film language in a usual sense. There were certain choices. There was ones like he was playing with the idea too much so that at some points I was like really at a loss of like what was happening. And it's stilted. It is designed to be so because it's some scenes are one take from one angle and that's it. So I just was having issue connecting with it. But I do think at some moments it works really well and really captures the visceral nature of what it's like to experience this level of abuse. And I think I do think it's a story that is fitting for this sort of mode, even if it's a mode that I don't agree with, because I also think it limits the amount of perspectives you can have. Like film is great because you can look at a movie like, I was watching one of the Harry Potters yesterday. And what's great about Harry Potter is that like you can do a wide shot and there are like 5 different scenes happening at once, depending on which character you're looking at. And that isn't happening in a movie like this because you're kind of constrained to one point of view. So that's where I was having issues with it. But I definitely think it's an emotionally affecting piece. I think it does capture the story in a way that is, I think, emotionally raw and authentic. And I do think it is taking chances and big risks with how to tell a story, which I will always admire. They just didn't work for me on round 1. So yes, for me, it is number 9. But I also, let's put it this way. I think there is a world where maybe if I watch it again, it could rise to like 7. It could maybe rise above Conclave. It is not getting a 1. So again, I don't have it out for the movie. I don't hate. There are very few movies I hate, if any. I really don't.
No, it's interesting to have 2 different perspectives on it.
Yes. So I will let you now talk about your favorite movie.
Speaking of perspectives, it's my favorite film of the year. I love Nickel Boys. I think it's just not beautiful, but such an interesting portrait of America at this time in particular, especially of the Black American experience. The way Elwood, we start off with his perspective in the film and his view on life. He's much more optimistic for his future and all that stuff. And then we run into Turner, who is at the school, who is a little more pessimistic. He's kind of resigned himself to not moving forward in the world, and how the country as well as the establishment they're in themselves is just broken and that it's not going to change. So having those 2 different perspectives on their experience in this country and actually like seeing the world through both of their eyes, I found deeply compelling. I think there were moments where you weren't sure whose eyes you were looking through, but you could tell through the subtle ways of what they focused on, what they looked at, whose perspective you were in. I just found that some people could say it's like this formal conceit is more like gimmicky, but I feel like it's like essential to it's a film about perspective in both of these characters' perspectives. So I think it's essential that we look at it through their eyes. And lots of people say, I think it was Roger Ebert who said like cinema is an empathy machine. I feel like this is a huge...
I'm not sure Roger Ebert is alive to give the review.
No, I think he would have loved this film because I think this is like empathy machine times 10. It literally puts you in the character's shoes. You feel everything that they feel. At least I did. I mean, that's why I connected to it so much. It's these characters go through a lot, and I felt like I was there alongside with them. I felt like I was there in their shoes. And yeah, it pulls us into their perspective. And I also think Anjou Ellis's performance, who's the only like leadish character,
it's impossible for
that
her not to be remarkable. She's
yeah,
one of the best.
yeah. And every scene she pops in is just so emotional. She has probably like 5 or 6 scenes throughout the film, and all of them are just directly at the camera. And she's such a powerful actress, and she can just do so much with so little. And she plays the conflict of her character, trying to help Elwood out. And I don't want to spoil parts of the film, but there's a lot of conflict going on with her character and the circumstances of her and her grandson that I just found deeply compelling, deeply moving. The moments that I cried in this film were moments with her, whether it's her talking to him at the park bench table at the school, or one of the final scenes that's just a scene of her crying into someone's arms, just absolutely shattered me. I just feel like the emotion is actually enhanced by the way the characters are shot. I felt more for these characters than I did for nearly any other character in the film because I'm there alongside them. I think it's insane how much chemistry these two lead characters have, even though they only share the screen together technically once when they look up at the reflection and both of them are on the screen together. That's the only time you see them share the screen together. The rest, they are separate. And I just felt their connection and their relationship was just so nuanced and defined and specific in a way that I think a lot of films struggle to find that level of specificity within relationships, and these actors were able to do that. And obviously, Ramel Ross, with him not even sharing the screen. I think 2 great breakout performances from both of these actors. They have to be both actors and cinematographers in a way, with the way the camera is strapped on them in some scenes, and the camera that itself is giving a performance at moments with what it chooses to look at, and all of that stuff. So, it's emotionally rich. It's I think. What would you call it? Like conceptually bold. It's politically charged, and it's I think it's a very confident film in asking for its audience to go along this journey with them. So yeah, I loved it. I don't have any negatives about it. It really moved me. It's my favorite of the year. So it's my number 1 here. Anthony's number 9, but we'll switch roles soon enough.
Yes, we will. Yeah, I think I appreciate everything that you said. And I like that he's taking chances, especially with his first feature. Like, this is a bold feature debut for Ramel Ross, or a narrative debut, we should say. It's okay.
That's Nickel Boys. Won't win Best Picture, even though it should. But it's only got one nomination.
It's definitely not winning Best Picture. That it only has one other nomination. It would have. I think it would have needed to like get cinematography and editing and like directing.
Even then, I don't think this is the kind of film that wins Best Picture. I think it is, as we can see amongst.
We talked about Emilia Pérez being the sort of like post-Trump election Best Picture winner, and it's not that Moonlight only won because of this, but it was the climate that we were in. Nickel Boys
is quite important
in that void this year if it wanted to, but I think it's a little too underseen, and I do think it's polarizing. I think you're going to get as many people like me who understand what it's going for and appreciate the risk, but it just doesn't connect. I just think that it's counterintuitive to have the camera on a character that like the point of view is revealing that character. You get what I'm saying? Where like the camera is supposed to be telling you about the character that you can't see, and you're looking at the character.
With what the camera does, I think it tells you so much about the character with where they look, where they choose to focus on, like in certain moments where they choose to focus and not look, and how I think so much of this film is how these two characters view the world, and I think it's so much more interesting when you see how they actually view the world rather than if it was just both of them on screen together talking about how they view the world. I think it just.
I would have loved to have seen Pauline Kael's review of this movie. It's like if I could bring her back to watch one. I was like, "What do you think of this?" Because she was like one of the first people to like understand what Spielberg was doing and blowing up the proscenium arch of classic films, and like she had an ability to talk about movies like this and just really just see them exactly as they were. I felt so. But of course, her and Roger Ebert will be viewing these in the great movie Palace in the Sky. All right. Next up is The Substance, which I still think we have to continue to say it is bonkers, crazy,
insane,
wonderful that is a Best Picture nominee and that it was a lock to get in here.
Mm-hmm. And that it's a front runner in 2 categories at this point is crazy.
Yeah.
I think we can say it's not going to win Best Picture pretty safely at this point. We don't really need to talk about that. But personal ranking wise, I feel like I just talked for a long time, so I'll let you go first.
No, don't worry. I think I filled a mini episode during my Emilia Pérez thing, but
yes.
I think you appreciated that I did that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Substance. I love this movie. It is such an exciting, fresh voice and vision. I likened it to Julia Ducournau with Titan and Raw. This just Coralie Fargeat, however you say it. Farja. It is just so, it's just brilliant. It is so conceptually audacious and bonkers, and I just, so many other adjectives. I'm clearly not at a loss for words, but I'm also speechless at just how she conceived of this movie and how she took such elements of everyday life, of things that we all go through. Yes, I'm talking about the bathroom scene and the bathroom mirror, where she's like, that is just so true to how we interpret beauty, how we interpret age, how we interpret celebrity. And she captures it all in this wildly unpredictable film. It is production. It is art directed to a T. The production design, the costume design, the colors pop like no other movie I've seen in such a long time. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley are such a well-balanced force in this film. This is a movie that has guts, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And I think we are better for it that a movie like this has been receiving this sort of attention and this sort of validation, because we need more movies like this. And I'm so, so happy for this movie. It is just absolutely brilliant in every sense of the word. And I love this movie. It is a very, very strong number 2. In another world,
nice.
I could maybe argue that like this is like the best movie, but I have to go with what I think is my favorite. So that's why it's number 2 and not number 1. But it is
big suspense for what number 1 is.
Oh yeah, shocker. But I think this is just it is a movie I think we'll be talking about in 50 years as just this is a brilliant film. This is a film that talk about capturing where we are today. This captures our current climate as far as how we look at beauty and self-worth. Masterful.
Yeah.
Couldn't love it more.
I really loved it as well. I was unsure a little bit the first time I saw it, just because so much of the film did seem heavy-handed, and like there wasn't much like I understood it upon second watch, hence the title. There isn't much substance to what was going on. It felt like more style than substance, but clearly based off the title and upon rewatch, that's obviously the point. Yeah, I love this film. I feel like you can project so many different things onto it. Obviously, it's about like beauty standards and like your self-worth and stuff like that. But I think you can like throw like addiction, tons of different stuff, and have it relate to what the characters are going through in this. And yeah, the performances, Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, equally great. The makeup is incredible. I think the main problem I still have with it is that final 20 minutes, I feel like goes on a little too long and maybe goes a little too far. I feel like this would be like lots of people's, like, especially like a more traditional viewer, like favorite of the year if it didn't quite go that far. But also I can really respect it going that far. And like we said, it's meant to be zany and huge and out there.
All the people that think like it went too far, it's like, where were you the first hour and a half? Like this movie's been going too far since the first scene.
Well,
like,
it continues to go further and further and further to I think a point where I think it breaks some people. But I think it didn't break me, but I could see why some people are like, okay, that's a little too far.
Modern day Carrie.
Yeah.
I think what I like about the ending is that it implies that this is not a struggle that people do alone, and that if we don't acknowledge it, then we will all suffer the consequences of it. And I think, like,
well, the thing is, she does do it alone. The entire film is just her
alone, and then you see the effect of that, and you see what happens when we don't acknowledge this. Because everybody goes through this, but we don't acknowledge it. And so I like that the ending kind of calls people out on it. It's like, you think this is dangerous? Well, then when you're in a group, don't perform for people. Like what Pamela Anderson is doing by not wearing makeup in interviews. I think that's bold. That's kind of the direction I think this movie wants you to go in by the end of it. So, yes, I'm very, very happy. And I think it's going to be, this is the definition of an honor to be nominated.
It is, for sure. I think I would have it at number 3 on my personal ballot. I quite enjoy it. I enjoy it even more upon rewatch. I just do think that it is zany, but I think there is a lot more substance once you, I think the style is so overwhelming and just so well done that sometimes you feel like it's just a little on the surface. But I think the more times you watch it, the more substance you find within it. And yeah, I think, like you said, it's just a story and a character that lots of people can relate to. Did a great job shooting for Los Angeles and France. Every aspect of the film, like the sound design is some of the best here. The production design is incredible. It's Kubrickian in lots of ways. Obviously, we said the makeup, the cinematography. It's just, I think, maybe
it's Kubrick
the
through
best.
a female gaze in many ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. I don't think it has a shot at winning. We already talked about that at winning. So no.
All right, and finally,
it's the last one. Okay.
We're up to the last one. We're up to Wicked. Jack, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, let's end on a positive note once again. So Wicked is my number 1, guys. No, Wicked is my number 9 here. People are going to think I'm a musical hater because I've got Emilia Pérez and Wicked at 10 and 9. But I like musicals, I promise. I love In the Heights. I love West Side Story. I love musicals. These two just don't seem to be.
I thought you were about to say I love High School Musical.
I do love High School Musical. I love Lemonade Mouth. I love plenty of musicals.
My favorite movie.
Yeah, Disney Channel has made lots of great musicals. But I think Wicked, I don't want to get into like everything that's been said about like the lighting and cinematography. I do think it's true. I think it's an elephant in the room throughout the entire film with the way it looks. I feel like so much of this film, like especially in the first half, I really felt like this intoxicating high of the film. It's very fun and enjoyable. And I feel like the cinematography takes away from that intoxication just a little bit because it's not as fun to look at as it is to feel. But and then once they become friends, for some reason, the film becomes a lot less interesting to me. I feel like it slows down a little bit and that it loses like some of the energy that it had in the first half. I have nothing negative to say about the 2 lead performances. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are incredible in this. 2 of the best probably the 2 best musical performances of the year. They carry the entire film confidently with their singing. They're incredible.
Emilia Pérez performances.
I don't know. I don't know. That's why I said probably. Yeah, definitely is what I'll say. But yeah, I think their performances are great. I had a fun time watching this. It's like a solid 6 out of 10 for me. I just and I did emotionally connect to it in a way that I have in some of these other films here. I think I really connected with Elphaba and her journey. I think that's a journey that I think most people can relate to. And that moment of them dancing is, I think, very impactful. But at the end of the day, this the second act of the film that does really hurt it for me. I just feel like it loses so much energy and pace to it and becomes less interesting. I feel like a lot of the film is kind of like what people complain about with the Solo film, where it's like, this is how he gets his gun. This is how he gets his name. Where it's like, this is how she gets her broom. This is how she gets her hat. Look, it's going to be the lion. Let's decide what color the brick road's going to be for 5 minutes, guys. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand. I've seen Wizard of Oz. But yeah, and it ends on a good note with Defying Gravity. But I do, once again, Defying Gravity is such a great, it is a great note, but it's such a great moment. But while watching it, I was like, why does it look like this? And I feel like so much of the time I'm taken out of the film because of how it looks. But I did rewatch it and I accepted how it looks and I enjoyed it more on a second watch. Know that I overcame that, but I don't dislike this film. I just think it's fine. Like lots of people love it, like you, which we can get into. Yeah. But I think it's a fine time. Yeah.
Yeah, a fine time. Put that on the Blu-ray box.
It's a fine time.
It's a fine time. Oscar Film Forecast. Yeah. So this is my number 1. I love this film, and I'm not going to admit how many times I've seen this. It is the record for the most times I've seen a movie in theaters. If you feel so inclined, go check my letterbox. And I will say most of those times, as you can see in the tags, were with other people because this was a big thing. I mean, I've been waiting legitimately almost my whole life for this, and to see it come to fruition exactly how we wanted is remarkable. And I think it is a pitch perfect adaptation of the show. But what I was really taken aback by and what I was so surprised with is that I found this to emotionally captivate me in a original way. I'm going back to the show for the first time on Broadway since seeing the movie in a couple of weeks. I'm very interested to see how I reframe the show, because a lot of what I love about this story now is organic to the movie. This is a story about accepting the inner child in you and rescuing that inner self, because it posits this theme that you will see yourself as an other and everybody else will see you as an other as long as that's what you see in yourself. And the idea that this movie ends on Elphaba reaching out to her younger self and saying, it's me, I'm here, and I accept who you always have been, and I've been trying to make people love you when I don't even love myself enough. Like, I thought that theme was so beautifully told. And I think it's just a crystallized version of what that is like to go through life. And I think especially for people who struggle with who they are, I've never seen a movie captured so distinctly and so clearly that the issue you have with that is because you don't love who you are. And that's what this movie's about, is accepting that. So emotionally floored me, thought that was absolutely brilliant. I think the dynamic between Grande and Erivo is just exceptional. It's comedically just high strung and just fantastic, but also there is such a wealth of emotion that is shared between those two without even sharing dialogue. Some of my favorite moments are just when they're looking at each other. When Ariana Grande wants to tell Elphaba that I am with you, I support you, I love you, I just can't get on the broom, I can't do this thing. And she goes off searching for anything that will prove to her that I still love you in this moment. And she goes and gets her cape. It's just devastating. And I think it taps into what is so great about genre stories like Dune, like this, going all the way, like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. They take a fantastical approach to human emotions that are so universal. And I think that when you have such wonderful musical sequences that fully luxuriate in this world, I mean, Dancing Through Life is a 21-minute sequence, and it is so well paced and so well orchestrated. And you have just a movie that knows exactly what it is, talk about having its heart in the right place, and is just such a pure expression of cinema, of movies, of musicals, of everything that it wants to be. It's hard for me to think that any movie I will look back on 2024 and like this, and I Saw This Evie Glow, which are my two faves of the year. Mm. It's hard for me to think that those are not going to be the movies that 50, 75 years when I'm long gone, that those will be the movies that I think define this year for me. And I do think it's deserving to be in the conversation for Best Picture, which we can now get into. Because I'm curious what you think, because I thought that you thought, based on this conversation, maybe you don't think Conclave is above it anymore. I don't know. Where do you?
I still think Conclave is above it. I just don't think a missed directing and a missed screenplay to miss those two nominations and win Best Picture is pretty unprecedented. And I think at this point, there's plenty of.
It's unprecedented because this is the first time that a movie with 10 plus nominations did not get those categories in Oscars.
And I think that says something. I think there's a lot of respect for it technically and acting wise, but I don't know how many people are going to sit down and be like, the film of the year is Wicked. I think it will do well placement wise on ballots, but I just don't see a world where it misses. Getting editing is impressive, and it did obviously overperform on nomination morning, but in missing director and screenplay, I just think is kind of the death knell for it. I just don't think it has that level of support for it to win. It could win SAG, it could win PGA. There could be a world where it breaks history and stats and records, as this season continues to prove. But I feel like it's also hurt by the stronger and more important film against it also being a musical, I think, in a way.
Yeah, I think that Emilia Pérez would have to falter, because that's where this movie can start to kick it into overdrive. SAG, yeah, that's the opening. SAG Ensemble, it would have to win, and I think it would have to win PGA, because then it proves that this is not a fluke. Now I understand that the voting and when we know about these winners will happen after Oscar voting closes, at least for SAG. But it'll, at least for us, show us that, okay, people are taking this seriously. And I do think on a preferential ballot, it could be very high up. Because I just think it's hard to hate this. Like, even you have your issues with it, but you don't.
It's number 9, but I still,
But even when you don't like it, you don't. It's hard, and maybe that's.
I don't hate it. No.
Yeah,
I don't hate it either. I think it's a 6 out of 10. That's not a bad rating. I just think it feels bloated and long at the same time and cut short. But I have issues with it narratively. But watching it, I still had a good time, so I can't say it's a bad.
So, and I think the rewatchability helps. So we'll see. I know it's definitely going to win some crafts. I think costume production design are pretty locked in. And I do think there's a world, because of its strength with the actors, that maybe one of them could surprise. We'll see. It's a harder task, but I don't think it's impossible for either Erivo or Grande to surprise in the long run.
It'd have to win editing to win Best Picture, because that's Chicago. Yes, but even then, Chicago was nominated in director and screenplay.
Yeah, editing, it's really weird this year because I don't, there isn't such a,
It's whatever you have winning picture, I think, honestly,
yeah,
is what you should have winning editing.
Who knows? I mean, it could be the musical that wins editing and sound. I mean, at this point, who knows?
That's what Chicago got. Yeah,
they don't want to go down the Dune path. I did some research,
okay,
and so there's only been 5 films in the history of the Oscars that got 10 plus nominations, so 10 or more, without getting a Best Director nomination. It happens more commonly in screenplay. It happened 8 times where a film got 10 plus nominations and didn't get a screenplay nomination with one of those 10 plus. 2 of those instances, the movie won Best Picture, that being Sound of Music and Titanic.
The comparison I've been saying recently has been Barbie, but I feel like more I think about it, it's more of a Black Panther, maybe in a way where it wins some tech categories, it maybe wins SAG Ensemble, but it's like maybe too blockbustery, too IP, too mainstream for it to end up winning picture. But it's up there.
It has, the thing that Black Panther didn't have though was the actors at the Academy. Like Michael B. Jordan didn't make it the supporting actor, even though it won SAG Ensemble. Where at least Ariana and Cynthia are represented here. And I still think that to compare it to any other genre film, like IP genre film, I think is not the best comparison, because I do think the fact that it is a big budget, classic style Hollywood musical is the best thing that's going for it. It is unique among recent, like, again, I feel like this, if you're asking me to, what is it closer to, La La Land or Chicago versus Barbie and Black Panther, I do think it's closer to Chicago and La La Land.
I would say the other one, but yeah.
So just look at the nominations. Black Panther got 7, Barbie got 8, but 2 of them are original songs. So if you take those out, it got 6 in the categories that they all could have competed in. Wicked gets 10. That's definitely closer to the other category.
I know. I just think in the way people view them, I think they might view them more towards.
I think Black Panther, as far as the win potential, as far as getting, maybe score. Now the Challenges is gone. Who knows? Maybe it's
I don't know about that.
Score, but production design, costume design, I think those are the likely wins for Wicked. So we'll see.
We have now ranked personally thoughts on the film and also if it can win Best Picture, all of the 10 Best Picture nominees. Now we have to combine our 2 shared lists with different opinions.
We just have to debate where is Wicked and where is Nickel Boys, because it's the same ranked for both of us. So I think we just have to do records.
It is.
For obvious. So Emilia Pérez is definitely 10.
Yes, Emilia Pérez is 10.
A Complete Unknown is 9.
Yes. I think Conclave is 8.
Brutalist is 7.
Yeah.
Dune Part 2 is 6.
Yeah.
Anora is 5.
Yeah.
I'm Still Here is 4.
Yeah.
Substance is 1.
So then we debate between Nickel Boys and Wicked.
For 2 and 3.
Well, I don't know how much debating can be had. Should we do a poll on the channel?
I just really think that's
Should we actually? Yeah, okay. Best of 3 though. Okay.
Oh God. All right.
It has to be best of 3. That's fair.
All right. Ready?
Okay. Ready. Rock,
paper,
scissors, shoot. Okay. Wait. We need to fix our timing.
All right. That's 1. Okay. Rock.
Wait.
I had rock. You had scissors.
Okay. Ready.
See,
rock.
Person agrees.
Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay. Wicked is number 2. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's better than Nickel Boys. The only time you'll ever hear Jack is where
I'm not agreeing with that. It's just what rock, paper, scissors happened to do.
I'll leave you on a word of advice that I give to everybody. If you're ever playing rock, paper, scissors, play rock first, because I have proven 9 times out of 10 your opponent will play scissors because it's the last word they hear. Rock, paper, scissors, which you proved very very clearly by playing scissors. That's how I won the first round.
I was confused the first time with our timing, but yes, I did do scissors.
That's the first time I didn't play rock, paper, scissors over the internet. So
yeah, it's a little more difficult, but yeah.
So
that's our ranking.
Preferential ballot. So in the end, Wicked did do very well.
I guess in a way. So did Nickel Boys.
The voter has to decide this via rock, paper, scissors. Wicked will win. All right, so that was a lot of fun. Thank you for watching, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, comment your personal preferential ballot for 10 Best Picture nominees. If you most of you probably haven't seen all of them because it is difficult to do. So whatever amount you have seen, give your personal preferential ballot of the ones you've seen. What you think of ours and the fact that Wicked is number 2. Do you agree with that? Do you think Nickel Boys should be number 1?
Do you love
Yeah.
Emilia
So
Perez? Do you hate Emilia
yeah,
Perez? We know you have a feeling about Emilia Perez.
no one is apathetic about Emilia Perez. That's for sure. But yeah, those are our rankings, our thoughts on all of that stuff. Comment, like, all that fun stuff. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video.
Bye,
Goodbye.
everyone.